acid from the material that bombards you whenever you switch on the telly, flip through a magazine, or delete another screenful of spam. All right, in most circumstances it's still just about required for life's perpetuation, but we can lead perfectly healthy, and indeed happy existences, without nookie, whoopee, or bonking. People can and do go decades without sex. Some live their entire lives without it. While the birds and the bees and the penguins on the rocks are busy doing it, nuns, mystics, and athletes in training have found plenty else to be getting on with, and they aren't the only ones. Elizabeth I was known as the Virgin Queen, and there was nothing metaphorical about the title, history assures us. Gandhi became celibate at age 36, despite still being married. What his wife thought of this, or of his late-life decision to test his resolve by sharing his bed with a procession of nubile young girls, is not recorded. The Shakers even founded a faith based around chastity. Interviewed on the eve of her 105th birthday in October 2008, Cornwall resident Clara Meadmore attributed her longevity to having remained a virgin. On the subject of relationships, she added, "I imagine there is a lot of hassle involved, and I've always been busy doing other things." But I don't think this was what my friend had in mind when she asked me what I did. Where did I draw the line, she meant, which segues neatly into that second question. Was I intending to pass up all sexual pleasure? One of my motivations for embracing chastity was a sense that sex had grown impersonal, that it was nothing more than a game of tennis, as a 30-something marketing whiz insisted to me while I was researching a magazine article on casual sex. More than what he'd said, it was his tone that got me. Matter of fact, without any frisson of joy. He wasn't even trying to shock. I've never been any good at tennis, whether on grass, clay, or high thread count Egyptian cotton. Yet I felt like I was the one at fault, so I kept trying. Sometimes my decision to have sex seemed to be based more on what was appropriate to the moment than on what was right for me. At a certain point, in certain scenarios, a part of me abdicated and gave in to the inevitable. Tipsily noticing that it was after midnight and I was far from home, say, in a dwindling group that happened to include a man I'd found myself in bed with some time before. "That was intense," he'd said afterward, as if intensity was something unexpected in sex. But it was intense, and whichever part of me had abdicated, it was never my heart. Wouldn't it be fun to have sex that was purely, deliciously physical? It would certainly smooth some of the more tempestuous aspects of dating, but at the same time, I secretly dreaded that I might finally get the hang of bedroom tennis. Once you've learned to separate sex from emotion, how simple is it to put them back together? So when it came to making rules for my experiment, they were unabashedly personal. What I discovered was that I could deal with any amount of orgasmic foreplay along the way, but it was last base, what sex ed instructors brave sniggers to term penile penetration, that tipped me over the edge. I had given something of myself, and accordingly, that was the moment at which I started needing more than I might ever have wanted from the man in question, the moment he went, in my eyes, from being an unassuming frog to being a shiny prince. It seemed illogical, possibly also biological, psychological, sociological. And yes, it had to do with numbers as well, those tallies we each carry around with us, inscribed in our minds, because they don't always belong in our hearts, in the faintest pencil, lest anyone see them. Mine is a greater number than I'd like, and contains some names I'd rather forget. I won't tell you exactly what it is, because a note of coyness here seems more instructive. While we're no longer supposed to be judged for our sexual conduct, we all know that the double standard lingers on. Even if men have got over it, we women have not. A tiny bit of me can't help judging myself, nor presumably can those women who consistently shave their own tallies in sex surveys. Perhaps it's just that we know that not every one of those strikes is without regret, that as we count them off, we pause over this one or that, recalling how the fun was seasoned with something that made us feel less good about ourselves. Liberated women that we are, will blame Victorian morality and its outmoded repressive mores, will blame ourselves for succumbing, and will deny our feelings. Because penile penetrative sex is what it took for me to add to that list, it was also where I drew my line. And put in such blunt terms, well, it didn't sound all that desirable.